Hello everyone, my name is Patrick Onkwaga and I'm excited to be able to share with you the presentation that I created based on the two last assignments, our coding and the analysis of the data that we collected in our observations. I titled my observation lunch in the middle of downtown because downtown is where I sat for 10 minutes to observe what people were doing. Um, my location was, to be precise, between Central and 6th Street. And if you know something about New Mexico, downtown is where pretty much all the activities take place in terms of population and restaurants and where there's a lot of rush during rush hour. And I did my presentation right during lunch, where everyone was getting in and out of offices. It was quite exciting. The reason why I decided to not observe inside the building was simply because it was during my fast period, meaning I couldn't have food or drink. So I was looking for a place where I would not be um, pretty much tempted by food or by anything. So any open area was ideal. Um, so I decided to go for it. These are some notes I took. I know you can't really see clearly what they are, but pretty much I was trying to write everything that I could see. I was trying to capture on paper everything I could see. The grammar, I did not care about it, which I knew was part of the instructions. And it was really an interesting exercise for me. Just writing out everything I could see and then also trying to code them based on color, which one fit with which, and what are the patterns that I start to see and that I could create based on those data I was collecting. Then I created this frame. It was very challenging, and I realized later on that it was because of the location I chose, uh, due to the fact that people were coming in and out all the time, always different people. It wasn't a very set position or setting. Everything was open. There was a lot of traffic. People were just driving by. I started focusing my coding on movement. So you can see on the first one I have random movement, crossing street movement, walking movement, and then miscellaneous, any other kind of movement. Um, it wasn't an easy exercise. I have to be honest with you. I was really having a hard time coming up with main titles. Like, how am I going to put them together? All those movements were so random that it was hard to really like focus on what to create and where they fit. Um, like I had mentioned earlier, like one of the biggest challenges was the randomness of data. Um, there was not enough of one thing for me to create a pattern and say, oh yeah, this is this, or all these elements will fit in this category. Everything just seems to be so out there and so disconnected, which also made it very difficult for me to analyze them because if all the data I collected were all so distant and so different, it was hard to think about how to analyze them and give them some kind of meaning. So this quote I'm sharing with you is kind of a reflection of that. It says, based on the assumption that the investigator wants to discover, understand, and gain insight, and therefore must select a sample from which the most can be learned, by Mayhem and Tisdale, was kind of a reflection of my experience. My location was not the right one. Um, the randomness of people and the randomness of data that I had collected were not enough for me to create something. So it made me think about the importance of thinking about what you want to observe and where you want to observe them prior to actually do the observation. Because then, if I have an idea of what I'm going for, I can pretty much set myself up for success from that point on. Uh, the analysis was, like I had mentioned earlier, very complex, very challenging, but some of the things that I was able to observe uh, was that like they were just random behaviors. One of the things that I really, really love and I'm really like fascinated about is observing and watching people. Why do we do what we do? Why do we think the way we think? So I did have a good time sitting out there for 10 minutes and just watching people coming by or listening, talking to each other. But the one thing that came out of everything I could say, and in all that randomness and all that uh, uh, um, diversity of data, was the fact that no one was connecting with somebody, with other people. It seems to be, it was crowded, but there was no connectiveness between the people. And that to me was fascinating and kind of, I was curious about that. And uh, people will just cross each other, look at their phones, look at the wash, looking at the street before they cross. But really, there was no eye contact. People were not looking at each other and say, "Hey, how are you?" Or, and I understand that we don't know each other, but at the same time, it felt off that so many people can be in the same place, but there's no opportunity for them to connect. And for those of you who have had a chance to talk to you, if you remember, my one of my focus in my dissertation plan is to think about how to create connectiveness between people. Um, Another thing that I had observed is the high rate of security. So even though there was no connection, but being downtown, I'm assuming that the fact that there was so many people out there, it called for the presence of so many officers. So for the 10 minutes I was there, I observed 3 to 4 police officers passing by, and to me it was another cause for curiosity. Um, the I had to realize that like there was there's a lot of subjectivity in the research, in qualitative research, because the way I will interpret any data I collect will be based on how I see them. So for example, I saw lack of connectivity between people. Somebody else could have seen something different, but because that's something I'm focused on, I was willing to see that. Um, so the subjectivity part of it is at the same time beautiful to me, but at the same time too, it can make the validity and the reliability of my research a little bit more questioned. Um, while watching one of the video by Mr. Gibbs or Dr. Gibbs, there was an interesting quote that he shared when he was thinking about the fact of writing. He said, "Writing is thinking." I always thought of writing as putting together your thoughts, but he said, no, just the action of writing is what you're thinking. It's not just something that you're doing to put our thoughts into paper. It is the thought, just a different way to express it. So I wanted to share that with you because I thought it was fascinating and useful for this study. Another quote that was also interesting to me is kind of what we as researchers are looking for, um, and how our job and our research should be kind of be based on our experiences and be based on how we see the world. And this quote is by Meheman Thiel is kind of saying that. It's saying qualitative researchers are interested in how people interpret their experiences, how they construct their world, and what meaning they attribute to experience. To talk again about the subjectivity of qualitative research, because we all have different ways to interpret our world. We have different ways to see the world and to give them meaning. Um, but that's one of the strengths of a qualitative researcher also. As part of a reflection, I copied and pasted this small paragraph as in what I had created in my reflection memo, and basically because it was for me a way to share um, my my personal view and my challenges while going through my experiences. I will let you read it. It's pretty simple, but it's a way properly, if you get a chance to go in depth and look at my coding and look at my analysis, this paragraph may will make a little bit more sense. Another important part of the reflection for me was the overall purpose of qualitative research, as I had mentioned earlier. It's just thinking about how to understand people, and this is something that is Merriam and Teasdale are also emphasizing. Why do we do what we do? Uh, what our actions have as meaning in our lives? How do we interpret them? How are they impacting others? So many questions that we may have and that we may create based on our observations. Um, and those questions, the way we code them, the way we analyze them, will be, for the most part, will affect the validity and the reliability of our study. And the individual who is the person running the study is a major factor, and that's why I added that second quote. My references were from Gibbs and from Mehiam and Tizel, and I really hope my presentation gave you a little bit of an idea of what I experienced through my observations. Um, and I look forward to hear your feedback. It was first time for me to go through this experience and through this process. So I'm really looking forward to hear your feedback and thinking about ways I can change it or tweak it. I've already made a lot of learning for myself, but anything that you can share, please do so. I will really appreciate your help with that. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.